Derek Cole stood in the doorway of the small house he'd shared with his wife for 7 years, one hand gripping the frame like it belonged to him alone. Snow blew in sideways from the street, sharp and white, covering the porch in a thin, icy blanket. In front of him, his wife Mia stood shaking in the doorway, clutching their tiny 3-week-old daughter against her chest. Her old brown coat didn't close properly over her soft stomach and her tired body. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She looked like everything he didn't want to be seen with. "Move," Derek said, his jaw tight. "You're blocking the door." Mia's teeth chattered as she tried to pull the coat tighter around the sleeping baby. "Derek, please," she whispered. "It's freezing. Just let me stay until morning. I just had the baby. I can't." "You can't." A cold female laugh floated from behind Derek. Brooke, the woman he planned to marry next month, stepped into view, her slim body wrapped in a fitted black dress, red lipstick still fresh on her mouth. She tilted her head and looked Mia up and down like she was looking at trash on the sidewalk. "Look at you," Brooke sneered. "You can't even take care of yourself, and you had the nerve to keep his last name. You're lucky he even let you stay this long." Derek smiled at that. He didn't defend Mia. He didn't tell Brooke to stop. His hand slid into his pocket for a second, brushing the cold bank card the way someone might touch a trophy. That morning he had emptied the joint account, every last cent, moving all their savings into an account with only his name on it. Money they had saved together, money Mia thought they still shared. Now it was his new start, his fresh life with Brooke, his new house, his new plans, his new future. Mia shifted their daughter higher on her shoulder, trying to shield the baby from the blast of icy air. "Derek," she whispered again, "I just had surgery. I can barely walk. I have nowhere to go. Let me stay in the guest room just for tonight. You can have the rest of the house. I won't even come near you. Please think about the baby." Brooke rolled her eyes and stepped forward close enough that Mia could see the sharp edge of her fake eyelashes. "You and that baby are holding him back," Brooke said, her voice low and cruel. "You're heavy, you're boring, you're broke, you don't look like a wife. You look like a problem. He doesn't want you. Didn't he make that clear enough?" Mia's lips trembled. "Brooke, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to my husband." Brooke leaned in and whispered right into Mia's face, her breath smelling like mint and wine. "Ex-husband," she said, and then she spat at the ground near Mia's boots and smiled when Mia flinched. Derek laughed, not loudly but enough for Mia to hear, enough to make her heart crack. "You're leaving, Mia," he said. "I've already called a lawyer. The house is in my name. The account is in my name. There's nothing here for you anymore. Go stay with your family. Go find a shelter. I don't care. Just get out of my house." Mia blinked through tears and snow. Her arms ached from holding the baby. Her legs felt weak. Her stitches pulled every time she shifted her weight. "You wouldn't even have this house without me," she whispered. "We built this life together." Derek stepped forward, his face getting close to hers. "No," he said softly, like he was explaining something to a child. "I built this life. I worked, I paid the bills, I made the plans. You just ate and slept and complained. And now you want me to throw away my future because you can't handle the truth." His voice turned hard. "Leave Mia now." A sharp gust of wind slapped them all. The baby whimpered under Mia's coat. Mia tightened her grip and took a shaky step backward onto the porch. Her boots slid a little on the ice. Pain shot up her back, but she steadied herself. Behind Derek on the small kitchen counter, a thick white envelope lay half covered by junk mail and takeaway menus. Mia had seen it earlier that day when she was warming a bottle. It had her full name written in neat black letters and the logo of a law office she didn't know. Hart and Lawson, attorneys at law. It had arrived that morning, just after she finished feeding the baby. She had planned to open it, but the crying, the chores, the arguments, everything had swallowed the day. Now it sat unopened, only a few steps behind Derek as he pushed her out into the storm. Mia didn't know the envelope held the words that would change her life forever. Derek didn't know the woman he was throwing into the cold with a newborn had already been named the owner of a billion-dollar empire by a grandmother he thought was poor and useless. He didn't know every cruel word that left his mouth that night was pushing him closer to the biggest regret of his life. He didn't know the next time he saw Mia, she would not be shivering on his porch. She would be walking into his brand new wedding like a queen, and he would be the one feeling small. But that night in the freezing wind, Derek only knew one thing: he wanted them gone. "Get off my property," he said, and he slammed the door in her face. The sound echoed through the quiet street as Mia stood alone in the snow, clutching her baby and staring at the door that had just shut her out of everything she knew. If only Derek knew who he had just kicked out into the night. If only he had known what she really owned. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city and country in the comments and stay with this story to see what happens next. 6 weeks earlier, there was no snow on the ground. The sky was clear, the air was warm, and Mia still believed that love could fix almost anything. She stood in the small kitchen barefoot on the cool tiles, stirring a pot of soup while humming softly under her breath. The baby inside her moved, a tiny stretch under her hand, and she smiled down at her round belly. "It's okay," she whispered, gently rubbing the spot. "Mommy's right here, we're going to be okay." The kitchen was simple but cozy, with yellow curtains and a little plant in the window that refused to die no matter how many days she forgot to water it. Photos lined the wall beside the fridge. A picture of their wedding day 7 years ago, with Mia in a simple white dress and Derek in a gray suit too big for his shoulders. A photo of them in their first apartment, sitting on the floor with pizza boxes and no furniture. A picture from a road trip where Derek had kissed her forehead at a gas station and told her he didn't need a big house or fancy car as long as he had her. Back then he had meant it, or at least she thought he had. A car door slammed outside. Mia glanced at the clock over the stove. Derek was home early. She wiped her hands on a towel and checked the soup one more time. She wanted everything to be perfect. Money was tight, he was stressed. If she kept the house calm and warm, maybe he would stop snapping at her so much. Maybe he would remember who they used to be. The front door opened. Derek walked in wearing a dark blue shirt and the expensive watch Mia had saved for months to buy him. He didn't smile. He didn't say hi babe like he used to. He just dropped his keys on the table and pulled out his phone, eyes glued to the screen. Hey, Mia said softly. You're home early. I made chicken soup, your favorite. Derek didn't look up. We need to talk, he said flatly. Her heart dipped a little. Those words never sounded good anymore. Okay, she replied, trying to sound calm. Do you want to talk now or after dinner? Now, he said. He finally looked up, but his eyes didn't hold the softness she remembered. They looked past her, around her, like he was inspecting a room he was thinking about leaving. I checked the bills, he started. We're drowning. Rent, hospital costs, your checkups, baby stuff, groceries. Everything is adding up. I'm the only one working and it's not enough. Mia swallowed. I know things are tight, she said, but the baby will be here soon. I'll find a job after I recover. I can work from home. I can babysit or do something online. We can figure it out together, Derek. We always do. He snorted. You say that like hard work is enough. It's not when I'm the only one actually doing anything. The baby kicked. Mia rested her hand on her stomach and took a deep breath. That's not fair, she said quietly. The doctor said I shouldn't be on my feet too long. I get dizzy. I'm growing a whole human. That counts as something. It counts as more weight on my shoulders, he snapped. More mouths to feed, more stress. His phone buzzed. He glanced down quickly and for a second his tough face softened into a little smirk. Mia saw the name flash across the screen before he turned it away. Brooke. Her stomach twisted. She had seen that name before, notifications late at night, half-hidden smiles, quick swipes to clear messages. She had asked once who Brooke was and Derek had shrugged and said, just someone from work. Chill. Now that same someone was messaging him while he stood there blaming her for everything. Derek, Mia said slowly, who is Brooke really? Are you serious? He rolled his eyes. We're talking about money and you want to talk about some woman from the office. You didn't say she was from the office last time, Mia replied, her voice shaking a little. You just said someone. Why is she texting you every night? Why did you delete your chat with her yesterday? He glared at her. You're spying on me now? Is that what you do all day? Sit here and go through my phone while I'm working like crazy to keep this roof over our heads? Tears stung Mia's eyes. I am not spying, she said. I picked up your phone to bring it to you when it was ringing and the messages were right there. She sent you a selfie. You told her she looked amazing. You never compliment me like that anymore. Derek looked away, his jaw tight. For a second Mia thought she saw something like guilt flicker across his face, but it disappeared as fast as it came. You know what your problem is, he said. You don't understand what it's like to carry everything. I need people who get it, people who hustle. People who believe in my dreams. You just bring me more problems. Your dreams, she echoed, hurt. We used to have the same dreams, a home, a family, a baby. You said this was what you wanted. Yeah, well, that was before I realized how small you think, he said. There's more out there, Mia. Bigger houses, better cars, real money. I can't reach any of that stuck here with you, watching you eat ice cream on the couch and cry about baby names. Mia's hand flew to her mouth. She hadn't known he noticed her late-night ice cream. She hadn't known he saw her tears. She hadn't known every little thing she did was being stored as a complaint in his mind. I thought you loved me, she whispered. I thought we were a team, he shrugged. I love not being broke. I love feeling like I'm going somewhere. And right now this, he waved a hand at the small kitchen, the baby bump, her messy bun is dragging me backwards. The soup on the stove began to bubble too hard. The lid rattled. Mia turned the heat down with a shaking hand. Silence settled between them like a heavy blanket. Somewhere deep inside, something small and bright inside her cracked, but it didn't go out. Not yet. The next few weeks felt like walking on broken glass. Some days Derek came home quiet and tired, barely speaking. Other days he came home angry, snapping at the smallest things, a sock on the floor, a bill on the table, a dish in the sink. When Mia tried to talk about the baby's name, he shrugged. When she asked if he wanted to feel the baby kicking, he said he was busy. When she cried in the shower, she made sure the water ran loud so he wouldn't hear. One night as Mia folded tiny onesies on the bed, Derek walked in holding a stack of papers. Sign these, he said, putting them on the dresser. What are they, she asked. It's just some stuff the bank needs for the mortgage and the account, he replied quickly. They said it's easier if everything is in one name, less drama if something happens, it's just paperwork, I've already signed my parts. Mia frowned. She picked up the papers and tried to read them, but the words blurred. The letters were long, full of things like transfer of ownership and sole control and grantor that made her head spin. Can we wait and go to the bank together, she asked. I don't really understand all this. Derek's face hardened. Do you trust me or not, he demanded. Do you think I'm trying to cheat you, is that it? No, because I'm the one talking to the bank, he cut in. I'm the one paying the bills, I'm the one keeping this place running while you rest all day. The least you can do is sign where I ask you to and stop making my life harder. His voice was sharp like a knife. The baby kicked again like she could feel the tension. Mia swallowed and took a deep breath. She wanted to say, I'm not trying to make your life harder, I'm trying to protect our life. But the words got stuck in her throat. Instead, she picked up a pen and signed the papers with a trembling hand. Derek gathered them up quickly, not giving her a second to change her mind, and tucked them into a folder. Good, he said, you did the right thing. He kissed her forehead, but the kiss was cold and empty. He smelled like a perfume that wasn't hers. As he walked out of the room, Mia sat back on the bed and pressed her hands to her face. A little voice in her heart whispered, something is wrong. But a louder voice, the one trained by years of patience and hope, said, he's just stressed. It will get better when the baby comes. The day the baby arrived, the world narrowed to pain and fear and love all mixed together. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and warm blankets. Mia screamed and pushed and cried while nurses held her hands and told her she was strong. Derek stood by the window at first, scrolling through his phone, eyes flicking up every now and then. At one point, a nurse gently asked if he wanted to stand closer to Mia. You can hold her hand, the nurse suggested. It helps. Derek hesitated, then came to her side, but his grip was loose, his eyes still distant. You're almost there, the doctor said. One more big push. Mia felt like her body was splitting in half. She dug her nails into the bed and pushed with everything inside her. And then crying, a sound that sliced through every other noise in the room, high and fragile and alive. You did it, the nurse whispered with a smile. She's here. They placed the tiny baby on Mia's chest and the world went soft. The baby's skin was wrinkled and pink, her eyes squeezed shut, her little fists waving in the air. Mia laughed and sobbed at the same time. Hi, she whispered, her voice breaking. Hi baby, I'm your mom, I'm right here. The baby settled against her like she knew that voice already. Mia looked up at Derek, waiting to see the joy she had dreamed of, the tears, the pride. He was smiling, but it was small, tired, and gone too quickly. She's cute, he said. You did good. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and turned away to answer, mumbling, yeah, I'm at the hospital. No, it's done. Yeah, I'll send a picture later. Mia looked back down at the baby and decided in that moment that even if Derek didn't change, she would give this child everything she had, even if it meant breaking. 3 weeks later, the cracks were wide open. The baby, whom Mia had quietly named Lily in her heart even though Derek hadn't bothered to help choose, woke up several times each night. Mia slept in short, broken pieces, always listening for the smallest cry. Her body still hurt, her stitches still burned. Some mornings she could barely stand up straight, but she did it anyway. She fed the baby, changed her, sang to her, rocked her until her arms shook. Derek had taken 2 days off work and spent most of them complaining about how loud the baby cried. After that, he went back to staying late at the office, coming home with the smell of perfume and someone else's laughter in his phone. On the morning everything changed, the doorbell rang while Mia was warming a bottle. She shifted the baby in her arms and opened the door to find a delivery man holding a small package in a thick white envelope. Sign here, he said. Mia balanced Lily on one shoulder and signed. The delivery man handed her the envelope. The name on the front made her blink. Ms. Mia Hart Cole, it said in neat black letters. Underneath a logo, Hart and Lawson Attorneys at Law. Hart, her grandmother's last name, the grandmother who used to send her handwritten birthday cards, the grandmother who always told her, one day you'll understand why I never begged anyone for anything. The grandmother who had passed away a few months before her wedding and hadn't left anything that Mia knew of. Her parents had told her she wasn't rich, she just lived simple. Mia closed the door and carried the envelope to the kitchen counter, laying it beside the bottle warmer. Her heart beat a little faster. Was this about her grandmother, about some old account, a letter? She wanted to open it right away, but Lily started to fuss and the water boiled over on the stove. By the time she calmed the baby, turned down the heat, and cleaned the mess, the envelope had slipped just out of sight, half covered by junk mail and a grocery list. I'll open it after I feed you, Mia told the baby. Maybe it's something good, maybe it's nothing, we'll see. When Derek came home that afternoon, his mood was worse than usual. He walked in with a strong smell of cologne and a tight look on his face. We need to cut back even more, he said after barely saying hello. The rent went up, prices are insane, I can't do this, you're going to have to figure something out, Mia, I can't keep carrying all of this on my own. I'm still healing, she said quietly. The doctor said, the doctor isn't paying our bills, he snapped. You think the landlord cares that you had a baby? His eyes swept the counter and landed on the envelope. What's that? It came this morning, she said. From some law office, it has my grandmother's last name, I think it might be about her. Derek picked it up, turning it over, his eyes narrowed. Why would a law office be writing to you now? I don't know, she replied. Maybe she had some savings, maybe it's about an old account or a letter she left, or maybe it's debt, he cut in. Maybe she owed money and now they're coming after you, great, more problems. He tossed the envelope back onto the counter. We don't have time for more drama. We don't know what it is yet, Mia said, reaching for it. Let me just open it and see. Not now, Derek snapped. I don't have time for you to break down over some sad letter about your family, I'm already late. Late for what? She asked. You said you were coming straight home. He hesitated. I have a meeting, he said. You're always having meetings, she said before she could stop herself. Who are you meeting, Derek, your boss or Brooke? His face changed instantly. You're really going to do this, he asked, his voice cold. After everything I do, you're going to stand there in my house and accuse me. This is our house, she whispered, or at least I thought it was. No, he said, it's mine, I pay for it, my name is on everything. Remember those papers you signed, the bank, the mortgage, the account. It's all in my name now, you signed it over, you gave it all to me. Her knees went weak. You said it was just for the bank, she whispered. You said it was just paperwork. It was paperwork, he said, paperwork that made sense, paperwork that put things where they belonged with me. So what do I have, she asked, her voice barely a breath. What do I have if it's all in your name? For a long moment he didn't answer. Then his lips curved into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You have that baby," he said. "Be grateful you have anything." The argument exploded from there. Mia, raw and tired and scared, finally said things she had been holding in for months. Derek, angry and proud and drunk on the attention of another woman, said things he could never take back. Words about her body, her weight, her dreams, her value. He called her lazy. She told him he was cruel. He told her nobody else would ever want her. She told him she would rather be alone than be with a man who saw her as a burden. The baby started crying, her tiny face red and scrunched as if she could feel every shard of hurt in the air. Mia picked her up, bouncing gently, trying to soothe her while tears ran down her own face. "This isn't just about me anymore," Mia cried. "We have a daughter, she deserves a father who—" "She'll have a father," Derek snapped. "When I'm not trapped with you, I'll actually be able to give her something better. Maybe when I'm with someone who understands my vision, I can fight for custody. Right now, you're just in the way." Brooke arrived not long after that, standing on their porch in a tight coat and high boots, looking like she was stepping into a movie, not someone else's marriage. The rest of the night slid like a bad dream into the moment on the porch, the cold wind, the cruel words, the slammed door. Hours later, Mia sat on a worn couch in a small church shelter, wrapped in a thin blanket someone had handed her at the door. The baby, now finally asleep, lay against her chest, wrapped in the only warm blanket Mia had grabbed in the rush. The shelter was quiet, full of other tired faces, other stories. A kind older woman with soft gray hair had opened the door when Mia knocked, helped her inside, and said, "You're safe here for tonight." Mia's head pounded. Her body ached. Her heart felt like a heavy stone in her chest. She stared at the wall, her mind replaying Derek's words again and again until they felt like a song she couldn't turn off. "You don't bring anything. You signed it all over. You have that baby. Be grateful." She shifted the blanket around Lily and felt something crinkle under her leg. Frowning, Mia reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a slightly bent white envelope. She stared at it for a second, confused. Then she remembered. The letter from Hart and Lawson. In the chaos when Derek was throwing boxes and shouting, the envelope had slipped off the counter and landed near her feet. Without thinking, she had scooped it up and shoved it into her coat pocket along with a pacifier and a small bottle. She had forgotten it was there, until now. Her hands trembled as she turned it over. Her name stared back at her in neat black ink. Ms. Mia Hart Cole. The baby shifted softly against her chest, letting out a tiny sigh. Mia pressed a kiss to the top of Lily's head, then carefully tore open the envelope. Several pages slid out, thick and heavy. The first page had a heading in bold letters: "Notice of Inheritance and Transfer of Assets, Estate of Billionaire Hart." Her breath caught. Billionaire Hart, her grandmother. Mia's eyes began to move over the words, tripping and stumbling over the legal language. Words like sole heir and entire estate and all holdings and interests flashed before her. She blinked, trying to focus. One line near the middle made her heart slam against her ribs. The total current assessed value of the Hart Group holdings, including real estate, company shares, patents, and cash, is estimated at $1.2 billion. Mia read it again, and again. Her brain did not want to believe it. 1.2 billion, billion, not thousand, not million, billion. She turned the pages with shaking fingers. There were lists of properties, apartment buildings, hotels, shares in companies she had seen on TV, land and places she had never visited. A note from the lawyer at the bottom of the last page said, "Please contact our office at your earliest convenience so we may finalize transfer details and explain your options. As per your grandmother's wishes, you have been the owner of these assets since the date of her passing. We have been waiting to locate you as the rightful owner, since the date of her passing." That meant that while she had been counting coins to buy baby clothes, while Derek had been yelling about bills, while he had been using her as an excuse for his failures, she had already owned a billion-dollar empire. She just didn't know it, until now. A loud rush filled her ears. The shelter room blurred at the edges. She thought of Derek's smirk when he told her the house and account were in his name. She thought of Brooke's laugh, sharp and cruel, as she called her heavy and broke and worthless. She thought of Derek saying, "You have that baby, be grateful you have anything." And here she was, holding that baby with papers in her lap, saying she had more than Derek could ever dream of. For a long moment, Mia just sat there, staring at the pages, letting the truth sink in. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they weren't only from pain. They were from something else too, something fierce and bright that began to rise up inside her chest. Slowly, very slowly, Mia wiped her face on the back of her sleeve. She looked down at Lily's tiny sleeping face and spoke in a low whisper so only her daughter could hear. "He thinks we're nothing," she said. "He thinks he threw us away, but he has no idea who he just pushed out into the cold." She lifted the papers, feeling their weight. They didn't just feel like money. They felt like a key, a door, a choice. "We're not going to stay broken, baby," she whispered. "We're going to stand up. Going to get stronger, and when he sees us again, he's going to wish he never treated us like this." In her mind, clear as a picture, she saw Derek's face at the doorway. His cold eyes, his mocking smile. She imagined that same face 6 weeks from now under bright lights at a fancy wedding he thought would be the crown of his new life. She imagined walking into that room not as the crying, shivering woman he'd thrown away, but as someone he could never ignore again, someone he would have to look up to. Someone who held his future in her hands. Mia folded the inheritance letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Then she held Lily a little closer and let a slow, determined breath fill her lungs. The scared, desperate version of herself was still there, but something new was waking up behind her eyes. She didn't know exactly how yet, she didn't know every step, but she knew one thing for sure: this story was not going to end with her on a couch in a shelter, broken and forgot. It was going to continue on her terms. And when it did, Derek Cole was going to learn exactly what kind of woman he had thrown into the snow. The next morning at the shelter, the world felt strange to Mia, like it was the same place, but she was not the same person anymore. The room still smelled like old blankets and strong coffee. The bed still squeaked when people turned over, and the heater still made a soft humming sound in the corner, but inside her something had shifted. She was still tired, her back still hurt, her eyes still burned from crying, but now there was something solid under all that pain, like a floor she could stand on. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed, holding Lily close to her chest, and looked again at the folded papers in her hand. $1.2 billion, she whispered slowly, reading the number again just to be sure. 1.2 billion, baby, can you believe that? Lily made a tiny sound and curled her fingers into Mia's shirt like she was holding on. Mia smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. He said I had nothing, she murmured. He said I only had you, he had no idea. Volunteer at the shelter, a kind woman with tired eyes and a soft voice, tapped gently on the bed frame. We're serving breakfast in the hall, dear, she said. Oatmeal toast, some fruit, you should eat something, you need your strength for the baby. Mia nodded and thanked her, but her mind was already somewhere else. She knew she needed food, rest, everything her body was crying for, but there was something more urgent sitting in her lap, pressing against her fingers. The letter, the contact number. The address, the truth about who she really was now. I'll eat after, she said softly to herself. First, I need answers. She wrapped Lily in the cleanest blanket she had, tucked the papers inside her coat, and walked out of the shelter into the cold morning air. The sky was pale and cloudy, and her breath came out in little white clouds, but the wind didn't feel as cruel as it had the night before. She found a bus stop and checked the address again. Hart and Lawson, attorneys at law, downtown. Her hands shook a little when she dropped the coins into the bus box, but not from fear this time. It was something else. Nerves, hope. A tiny bit of excitement mixed with sadness. The bus ride felt longer than it really was. Each time it stopped, more people got on, and she felt their eyes slide over her and the baby. Some looked bored, some looked tired. One older lady smiled kindly at Lily and said, "She's a gift, you know." Mia swallowed the lump in her throat and whispered, "I know." When the bus finally screeched to a stop near a tall glass building with gold letters on the front, her heart started to pound. She stepped off carefully, pulled her coat tighter around Lily, and stared up at the sign. Hart and Lawson, attorneys at law. It looked too beautiful, too expensive, too clean, like a place made for people who never worried about rent or hospital bills. You belong here, a small voice inside her said, whether they know it or not. Inside the lobby, everything was soft and quiet. The floor shone like water. The walls were lined with framed photos of serious-looking people in suits shaking hands. A woman sat at the front desk with her hair in a neat twist and a thin silver necklace around her neck. She looked up and smiled gently when she saw Mia standing there in her worn coat, holding the baby. "Good morning," the woman said. "How can I help you?" Mia stepped forward, trying not to let her knees shake. "Hi," she said, her voice small but clear. "My name is Mia Cole. I got this letter yesterday." She held out the envelope with the Hart and Lawson logo on it. The receptionist took it, checked the name, and raised her eyebrows slightly, not in a rude way, more like she recognized something important. "Please have a seat, Mrs. Cole," she said calmly. "I'll let Mr. Lawson know you're here." Those few minutes of waiting felt like forever. Mia sat on a cushioned chair by the window, bouncing Lily gently on her knee. People walked past in suits, carrying folders and speaking in low voices, but no one stared. No one laughed. No one called her names. She was just another person in the building. It felt strange and peaceful at the same time. A door opened across the room, and an older man with silver hair, kind blue eyes, and a dark suit stepped out. He smiled when he saw her. "Mrs. Cole," he asked, "please come in, I'm Robert Lawson." His voice was calm and warm, like he was talking to someone he had known for years. Mia stood up slowly and followed him into a large office with tall windows and rows of books. She sat down in the chair opposite his desk, still holding Lily, and tried to steady her breathing. "I know this must be a lot to take in," Mr. Lawson said gently as he sat down. "Your grandmother was a very special woman." Mia's heart squeezed at the word. "You knew her?" she asked. The man nodded. "Yes, I handled her legal matters for many years. She spoke about you often. She was very proud of you." Tears jumped into Mia's eyes before she could stop them. For months, she had been called lazy, useless, a burden. Hearing someone say she was proud of you felt like a soft blanket around her broken heart. "I thought she didn't have money," Mia whispered. "She always lived simple. She wore old dresses, cooked her own food, sent me small gifts she could afford. My parents told me she didn't have much." Mr. Lawson nodded slowly. "Your grandmother chose to live that way," he said. "She didn't want people around her because of her money. She believed that simplicity shows people's true hearts. But behind that simple life she built something very large and very powerful. She started with one small building, then another, then a small company. Over time those investments grew and she formed the Heart Group. She kept it quiet and put trusted managers in place. When she passed, she left everything to you. He opened a folder on his desk and slid some papers toward Mia. You are the sole heir to her estate, he continued. All her shares, properties, and accounts are now under your name. The total value is estimated at a little over $1.2 billion. Mia stared at the papers without blinking. The numbers didn't look real, they were too big, too loud. Why me? She whispered. Why would she give all this to me? Mr. Lawson smiled and folded his hands. She said you had the kind of heart that could carry this without becoming cruel, he replied. She told me, if Mia learns the value of things when she has nothing, she'll respect what she has when she finally has everything. She trusted you, and now it's your choice what to do with it. Mia pressed her lips together to stop them from shaking. I don't know anything about business, she confessed. I don't know how to run companies or manage all this. Yesterday I was sleeping in a shelter. Last week I was wondering how to buy baby formula. How am I supposed to lead anything? You're not alone, Mr. Lawson said calmly. There are people already working in the Heart Group, managers, accountants, lawyers. Your grandmother set up a team to keep everything running. They will report to you and help you make decisions. My job is to guide you through the legal side and explain every step. We will move at a pace that feels right to you. You don't have to become an expert overnight. You just have to be willing to learn and strong enough to decide. Mia looked down at Lily, whose tiny fist was curled around the edge of her blanket. I don't want her to grow up afraid like I was, she whispered. I don't want her to beg anyone for love or food or respect. I want her to know she's safe. And now, Mr. Lawson said softly, you have the means to build that life for her. He reached into the folder and took out a smaller envelope, sealed and neatly labeled with Mia's name in a handwriting she recognized at once. Her grandmother's handwriting. Her breath caught. She left this for you, he said. She asked me to give it to you personally when you came. With shaking hands, Mia took the letter. For a moment she just held it, pressing it to her chest. Then slowly she opened it and unfolded the paper inside. My dear Mia, if this letter has reached you, it means I am no longer there to hold your hand, but I hope my words can still sit beside you like I used to. Life has not always been gentle with you, and for that my heart aches. I watched you be kind when people did not return your kindness. I watched you stay soft in a hard world. I watched you love even when you were tired. You may be sitting there now feeling small, hurt, or lost. But hear me, you are not small, you were never small. What I leave you is not just money, it is freedom. Freedom to choose where you live, freedom to protect your child, freedom to say no to those who treat you like you are less. You will be tempted to use this power to hurt those who hurt you. Some people may even say that is what you should do. But I ask you, before you act, look at your heart. If your actions drain the light from it, they are not worth it. If your actions help you stand taller without becoming cruel, then do not be afraid to take them. Forgive when you can, but never forget who you are. Walk with your head high, my girl, you come from strong roots. With all my love. Grandma Billionaire. By the time she finished reading, tears were running down Mia's face, but they were different tears, not just pain. There was strength in them too. She pressed the letter to her lips, then folded it carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Thank you, she whispered. I won't waste what you gave me, I promise. The rest of the meeting was full of details, forms to sign, documents to read, explanations about bank accounts, properties, and companies. It felt like someone was slowly lifting a heavy curtain and showing her a whole new world behind it. There was a large estate outside the city that was now hers. There were apartments, office buildings, even a famous hotel she had seen on TV. It was too much to fully understand in one day, but Mr. Lawson kept his voice calm and steady, like a teacher who knew his student would catch up if given time. At the end, he handed her a key card and an address written on a small note. This is your grandmother's house in Ridgewood Hills, he said. It's fully staffed and waiting. I suggest you move there, at least for now. It's safer and more comfortable for you and the baby. Leaving the building, Mia felt taller, even though her steps were still careful. People walked past her, busy with their own lives, having no idea that the young woman holding a baby in a cheap diaper bag was now one of the richest women in the city. For a moment she thought about walking back to their old neighborhood, standing across the street from the house Derek had thrown her out of, and watching his face when he saw her get into a black car with a driver and bodyguards. But then she remembered her grandmother's words, if your actions drain the light from your heart, they are not worth it. She took a slow breath and turned in the opposite direction. Not yet, she murmured. This isn't about him, not first, this is about us. Later that day, a dark car picked her up from the shelter. The driver, a quiet man named Tom with kind eyes, opened the door for her like she was someone important. It felt strange, but she tried not to shrink away from it. Lily slept in her car seat, her tiny chest rising and falling softly. As the car moved through the city and then up into the hills, Mia watched the buildings change from small brick houses to large homes with gates and tall trees. When they finally turned into a long driveway lined with lights, her breath caught. At the end of the drive stood a white mansion with tall windows, wide steps, and a front door that looked like the entrance to a storybook. An older woman with gray hair neatly tied back and a dark blue dress stood waiting at the top of the steps. When Mia stepped out of the car, still unsure if she was dreaming, the woman smiled warmly. "Mrs. Cole," she asked. "Welcome home, I'm Janet. I've been the caretaker here for many years. Your grandmother spoke about you often. We're so glad to finally have you here." "Home," Mia repeated softly. The word felt strange on her tongue. For so long, home had been a small house where she walked on eggshells. Now it was this, a place she hadn't even known existed. Tears burned her eyes again, but she blinked them back and smiled. "Thank you, Janet," she said. "This is beautiful." Inside, the mansion glowed with warm light. The floors shined, the walls were lined with family photos and paintings, and the air smelled like vanilla and fresh bread. A small team of staff stood quietly in the hallway, a housekeeper, a cook, a gardener. All of them smiled politely. No one looked down on her worn coat or her tired face. No one saw her as a burden. They only saw her as the woman of the house. That first night, after Janet showed her a soft bed, a master bedroom, and a nursery that had been prepared with gentle colors and toys, Mia stood by the window holding Lily and looked out at the city lights below. The sky was dark but full of glowing spots. "Remember this feeling," she told herself. "Remember what it feels like to be safe." Days turned into weeks, and slowly Mia began to grow into her new life. In the morning, she took calls with Mr. Lawson and the company managers, learning the names of the businesses she now owned. She listened more than she spoke at first, taking notes, asking simple questions like, "Why do we do it this way? And is there a better option for the workers?" Some of the older men in suits tried to brush her off at first, but she refused to shrink. The more she listened, the more she understood. And when she finally did speak up with ideas, they realized quickly that she was not just a scared girl with money. She was smart, thoughtful, and strong. In the afternoons, she walked the halls with Lily in her arms, humming soft songs and telling her stories about the grandmother she would never meet. "She was brave," Mia would say. "She built all this from almost nothing. She believed in me when I didn't even know who I was, and now I'm going to do the same for you." At night, when the house grew quiet and the staff went home, Mia sometimes sat in the huge living room with a cup of tea and thought about Derek. She wondered what he was doing, what lies he was telling, how he was spinning the story. She imagined him bragging to Brooke about how he was finally free, how he had handled his old life. The thought no longer stabbed her heart in the same way. It hurt, yes, but there was something else wrapped around the pain now: clarity. She could see him more clearly than she ever had before. A man who needed to feel big by making others feel small. A man who thought money and power made him better than everyone else, even when he didn't really have either. One afternoon, Janet walked into the sitting room holding a cream-colored envelope on a silver tray. "This came for you, ma'am," she said. "It was sent to your old address and forwarded through Mr. Lawson's office." Mia took the envelope and turned it over. Her heart did a small flip when she read the names on the front: Derek Cole and Brooke Simmons. With shaking fingers, she opened it and pulled out a glossy card decorated with gold letters and tiny fake diamonds. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Derek Cole and Brooke Simmons on February 10th at the Ridgeview Grand Hotel." The world went silent for a moment. Then slowly Mia started to laugh, not the broken laugh she had let out on the porch when Derek slammed the door in her face. This one was soft and surprised, almost unbelieving. She shook her head. "Of all the hotels," she whispered. She looked again at the name, Ridgeview Grand, the same hotel listed in the Hart Group papers as one of her grandmother's biggest properties, the same hotel she now owned. The man who had laughed while his new woman spat at her had booked his own wedding in one of her buildings. He was walking into her world without even knowing it. Janet watched her carefully. "Is everything all right?" she asked. Mia looked up, her eyes bright with something fierce and calm. "Yes," she said softly, "everything is exactly how it should be." She slid the invitation back into the envelope and held it between her fingers. "Janet, how far is Ridgeview Grand from here?" "About 30 minutes with light traffic," Janet replied. "Would you like to visit it? The manager would be honored to meet you, I'm sure." "Yes," Mia said, "I would." The next day, she dressed in a simple but elegant navy dress that Clara, a stylist Lawson's assistant had recommended, had picked out for her. Her hair was smooth and down, falling softly over her shoulders. She didn't look like the woman who had stood shivering on a porch in a torn coat. She looked like someone who belonged in polished hallways and boardrooms, but her heart, the soft part that loved easily, was still there. She held Lily, now a little bigger and more curious, in a soft carrier against her chest. "We're just looking," she whispered to her daughter. "We're not going there for him, we're going for us." Ridgeview Grand was even more beautiful up close than it looked in pictures. The entrance had tall glass doors, gold handles, and a wide carpet that rolled all the way into the lobby like a red river. The manager, a smart-looking man in his 50s named Eric, greeted her as soon as she stepped in. He had been told that the new head of Heart Group might visit, but clearly hadn't expected her to be young, holding a baby. His surprise only lasted a second before he smiled politely. "Mrs. Cole, welcome," he said. "It's an honor to finally meet you. We are very grateful for everything your family has done for this property." "Thank you," Mia replied, keeping her voice steady. "I just wanted to see the hotel in person and ask a few questions, especially about upcoming events." He led her through the lobby, pointing out details about the design, the staff, the rooms, and the service. They passed the ballroom, where workers were testing lights and adjusting decorations for a wedding rehearsal. Soft music played from the sound system, and white chairs were being lined up in neat rows. "We have a big event coming soon," Eric said casually. "A wedding for a Mr. Cole." He requested a lot of attention to detail. "Yes," Mia said quietly, her eyes scanning the room. "I heard." She walked into the ballroom slowly, letting the space swallow her. Crystals on the chandeliers sparkled, reflecting tiny stars onto the walls. The polished floor shined under her feet. She imagined the room filled with people, laughter, music, and Derek standing at the front in a suit, smiling like he had won something. For a moment, old pain tried to rise, but she pushed it back gently. "Do you treat all your clients this well?" she asked softly. Eric nodded. "We try our best, ma'am. We aim to give every guest a memorable experience. Is there anything specific you'd like us to adjust?" Mia thought for a moment. "Yes," she said finally. "Make sure no one feels small in this room, not the servers, not the cleaners, not the guests, no one. Train your staff to treat everyone the same, no matter what they're wearing." The manager looked at her with quiet respect. "Of course," he said, "I'll make sure of it." She turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing," she added. "When the groom checks in for his wedding, there will be final documents to sign, right? Bills, agreements, that sort of thing." "Yes," Eric said, "standard procedure." "Good," Mia replied. "Make sure the ownership name is clearly printed on the top of those documents. Heart Group Holdings under my name. I want him to see it." Understanding flickered in the manager's eyes. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "As you wish, Mrs. Cole," he said. On the drive back to the mansion, Mia sat quietly, watching the city slide past the window. She wasn't planning to scream or throw drinks or destroy his wedding. That wasn't who she wanted to be, but she also wasn't going to hide. She had been silent for too long. Now if she walked into that room, she would walk in as herself, no longer begging for the smallest piece of respect, but standing in the full truth of who she was and what she carried. Over the next days, she prepared in her own quiet way. She met again with Clara, who helped her choose a dress that made her feel strong but not loud, elegant but not fake. A soft, deep green gown that brought out the warm tone of her skin and made her eyes look brighter. They chose shoes she could walk in without fear of falling, a simple gold bracelet that had belonged to her grandmother, and a small clutch just big enough for her phone, and a folded copy of the inheritance letter if she ever chose to show it. "You don't have to prove anything to him," Clara said as she adjusted the dress. "You know that, right?" "I know," Mia replied. "I'm not doing this to prove something to him. I'm doing this to close a door I didn't get to close before. I want to walk away from this story knowing I didn't stay the girl he left in the cold." The night before the wedding, after Lily finally fell asleep in her crib, Mia sat at the desk in her room and wrote a note on a small card. Her handwriting was slow but steady. "Dear Derek, you once told me I had nothing. You once said the only thing I had was our child and that I should be grateful. Now I have everything I need, and none of it came from you. This hotel, my home, my life, my strength. You don't own a single piece of it. See you soon. M." She didn't know yet if she would give him the card. Maybe she would keep it as a reminder for herself. Maybe just writing it was enough. But as she placed the card in her bag, she felt a strange calm settle over her. The version of her who had stood crying in the snow was gone. She honored that girl, loved her, but she was not her anymore. In the early morning light of February 10th, the day of the wedding, the mansion was still. Snow lay softly on the trees outside, but inside everything was warm. Mia dressed in her green gown, her hands steady as she smoothed the fabric over her hips. Janet stood in the doorway, eyes shining. "You look beautiful," she said softly. Mia smiled. "Thank you," she replied. She walked over to Lily's crib and kissed her tiny forehead. "I'm going to finish something today," she whispered. "Something that started the night he threw us out. When I come back, that chapter will be closed." She picked up her clutch, took one last look in the mirror at the woman staring back, a woman who had walked through heartbreak, poverty, and fear and had come out the other side stronger and walked toward the stairs. Each step echoed through the quiet house. At the bottom, the front door waited, and beyond it, the car that would take her to the hotel where her past and present were about to collide. As her hand touched the door handle, her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Lawson. "Just a reminder, you do not owe anyone an explanation today. You are in control. We are all behind you." Mia took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and opened the door. The cold air brushed her face, but this time it didn't bite. She stepped outside, walked toward the car, and slid into the back seat. As the driver pulled away from the mansion and headed toward Ridgeview Grand, she felt her heart beating steady and sure. Today, the man who had laughed while she begged would finally see the truth. He just didn't know yet that the ground he was standing on already belonged to her. What would happen when he realized the nobody he had thrown into the snow now held the keys to his perfect wedding, his public image, and his future? What would he do when the doors of his new life opened and she was the one standing on the other side, not broken, not begging, but standing tall? The ride from Ridgewood Hills to downtown took almost an hour, but to Mia it felt like minutes. The city blurred past the tinted car windows in streaks of white and gold, snow still clinging to the edges of the streets, people rushing along the sidewalks bundled in coats. Inside the warm car, silence filled every corner except for the faint hum of the engine. Tom, her driver, kept his eyes steady on the road while soft instrumental music played through the speakers. Mia sat in the back, her hands resting on the folds of her dark green gown, the same shade her grandmother used to love. She could feel her heartbeat, calm but deep, like the steady rhythm of something that had been waiting years to rise. The night outside glittered with lights and noise, but she was wrapped in quiet determination. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about truth, about walking through the same world that had once crushed her but this time standing taller than its weight. When the car slowed at the turn leading to the Ridgeview Grand Hotel, Mia looked up. Even from the distance she could see the hotel glowing like a palace, glass walls catching the streetlights, chandeliers visible through the wide windows, banners strung with the words "The Cole Simmons Wedding." Reporters and photographers stood behind velvet ropes, their cameras flashing like tiny storms. Guests stepped out of sleek cars, women in bright gowns, men in sharp suits, laughter echoing across the marble entrance. It was everything Derek had always wanted: the attention, the wealth, the illusion of perfection. "Are you sure you want to go through the front, ma'am?" Tom asked quietly, glancing through the rearview mirror. "Yes," she replied simply, "no more back doors for me." He nodded, pulled the car up to the entrance, and stepped out to open her door. The moment Mia's heels touched the marble, the air changed. Heads turned, cameras flicked toward her automatically, flashes lighting her face. She didn't rush or shrink. The gown hugged her perfectly, its fabric flowing like calm water, her hair softly curled, her makeup simple yet elegant. The crowd didn't know who she was, but they could feel something about her, something powerful, something unspoken. She walked through the wide glass doors. The lobby smelled of roses and polished wood, the chandeliers throwing gentle light across the floor. The receptionist, recognizing her from the internal memo as the new owner of Hart Group Holdings, straightened immediately and greeted her with a respectful smile. "Good evening, Mrs. Cole," she said softly. "Welcome back to Ridgeview Grand. Everything is in place as you requested." Mia nodded. "Thank you." Her voice was calm, low, controlled. She didn't need to raise it to be heard. She glanced once at the mirror near the elevator, catching her reflection, elegant, poised, unrecognizable compared to the woman Derek had abandoned in the snow. The elevator ride to the main ballroom felt strangely still. She could hear her heartbeat in the silence, steady and certain. When the doors slid open, the sound of violins and chatter floated in from the corridor ahead. She followed the music, her heels clicking lightly on the marble floor until she reached the grand doors of Ballroom A. Inside, the sight hit her like a memory she'd already dreamed. The ballroom sparkled under hundreds of lights. Rows of white roses lined the aisle, golden ribbons hung from the chairs, and the air shimmered with the sweet scent of perfume and champagne. Guests filled every seat, smiling, chatting, unaware that the most important guest had just arrived. At the front stood Derek, tall and polished in a gray tuxedo, his hair perfectly styled, a proud smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Beside him, Brooke gleamed in a fitted white gown, her diamonds catching the light like tiny stars. She turned toward him, laughing softly, the picture of a woman who thought she had won. Mia stayed by the doorway, watching. For a heartbeat, a wave of old pain touched her chest, the memory of him laughing as Brooke spat insults in her face, the sting of the cold air that night, the way his voice had sounded when he told her to get out. But the pain faded as quickly as it came. She had already cried those tears. Tonight she had come for something else, closure. A soft voice at her side made her turn. It was Eric, the manager. "Everything is ready," he whispered. "Shall I cue the staff?" Mia nodded once. "Yes, but wait for my signal." The ceremony began. Music swelled as Brooke's bridesmaids walked down the aisle, their dresses pale silver. The officiant smiled, guests clapped lightly, and Derek's grin widened. He looked around the room, soaking in the admiration, oblivious to the storm walking quietly toward him. When the last bridesmaid reached the altar and the music softened, Mia stepped forward. The sound of her heels on marble was light but sharp, echoing through the quiet room. A few heads turned, first out of curiosity, then confusion. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Who is that? Is she with the groom's family? She's beautiful." Then Derek's eyes lifted. His smirk froze mid-curve, his body stiffened, the color drained from his face. "Mia," he whispered so softly that only the nearest guests heard him. The officiant paused, glancing between them uncertainly. Brooke turned to look, confusion twisting into disbelief. Mia kept walking, calm, graceful, eyes locked on Derek. Her gown brushed lightly across the floor, each step measured and unhurried. When she reached halfway down the aisle, she stopped. The entire room was watching. The music had faded, replaced by murmurs and a low hum of tension. "Don't stop on my account," she said quietly, her voice carrying clear through the microphone that hung above the altar. "I just came to make sure everything here is perfect." Derek's mouth opened but no words came out. Brooke's eyes narrowed. "What is she doing here?" she snapped to the nearest usher. "Get her out." "No one's going anywhere," Mia said gently, raising a hand. "Unless you want to remove your employer." The guests exchanged confused glances. Derek blinked. "Employer." Mia smiled faintly. "Yes, this hotel belongs to the Hart Group Holdings, and as of last month I'm its majority owner." A loud murmur swept through the room. Brooke's jaw dropped. "That's impossible," she scoffed. "You're broke, you have nothing." "Correction," Mia said softly. "I had nothing." You'd be surprised how quickly that changes when someone finally opens the right letter. The tension in the air thickened. Derek's hands clenched at his sides. "You're lying," he said, his voice shaking. This can't be real." Mia reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded document. "Recognition of transfer," she said, holding it out to the nearest staff member. "Signed by the legal representatives of Hart Group Holdings, witnessed by Robert Lawson. It's all there." "I didn't want to interrupt your big day, but I thought it might be polite to introduce myself properly. After all, you're celebrating in my building." The staff member handed the paper to the officiant, who looked uncertain, then passed it to Derek. He scanned it quickly, his eyes darting over the page. The official letterhead glared back at him in bold: Hart Group Holdings, owner, Mia Hart Cole. His face turned white. Brooke snatched the document. "This is a joke," she said sharply. "You printed this to embarrass him, didn't you?" "She's lying." Mia tilted her head. "You really think I would waste my time printing fake documents? That's cute." Her tone stayed calm, almost kind. "You can call Mr. Lawson's office tomorrow morning if you like, but you might want to make sure your wedding deposit clears first, since technically it was processed through my accounts." Laughter bubbled up from the back of the room, half nervous, half shocked. Someone whispered, "She's the owner." Another voice answered, "Looks like it." Cameras clicked. Phones started recording. Derek looked around wildly, realizing that every lens was pointed at him, every whisper slicing through his perfect image. Brooke turned on him, her face twisting. "You told me she was poor," she hissed. "You told me she was nothing." "I thought she was," Derek stammered, his voice cracking. "She was living in a shelter." Mia's gaze sharpened. "Yes," she said softly, "a shelter with the baby you abandoned while you drained our account and called it ambition." A stunned silence followed. Derek looked down, his mouth trembling. "I didn't know." "No," Mia interrupted. "You didn't care to know." She stepped closer, her voice steady, her words clear. "You were too busy chasing what you thought mattered: money, attention, control. You thought kicking me out made you powerful. It didn't, it just showed how small you really were." Brooke's face hardened. "This is pathetic," she snapped. "You came here to humiliate him because you can't let go, you're jealous." Mia turned toward her slowly. "Jealous," she repeated, her voice soft but firm. "Of what?" A woman marrying a man who doesn't know loyalty or kindness, a man who laughs while others cry. No, Brooke, I came here to remind you both that the people you step on to climb up are the ones who see how far you fall. Gasps echoed, the guests looked torn, half-shocked, half-awed. Derek's eyes flickered, his jaw tight. Mia, please, he said, his voice breaking, let's talk privately. There's nothing private left between us, she said calmly. You made sure of that when you threw me into the snow. The world watched you humiliate a woman who had just given birth. Tonight, the world gets to see the rest of the story. She reached into her clutch again and pulled out a small card. Here, she said, handing it to him, read it, you always liked words more than actions. He unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning the message. You once told me I had nothing, now I have everything I need and none of it came from you. For a second the air seemed to freeze, Derek's throat bobbed, his fingers trembled. Brooke grabbed the card, read it and let out a sharp laugh that broke midway into anger. So this is your revenge, walking in here like a ghost? Mia shook her head. Revenge would mean I want you to suffer, she said quietly. I just want you to remember every time you look at her. She glanced at the white roses around them. Remember the woman you left to freeze while you chased what you thought was love. And every time you step into a building with my name on its deed, remember whose hands built your foundation. The officiant lowered his notes awkwardly. Should we, continue the ceremony? Brooke glared at him. No, this is over. She turned to Derek, eyes blazing. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You lied to me about her, about the money, about everything. I'm not marrying a fraud. Brooke, wait. Derek reached for her, but she yanked her hand away. Don't touch me, she snapped. You're pathetic. She tore off her veil, threw it on the floor, and stormed down the aisle. Reporters surged toward the doors. The sound of shutters and flashing bulbs filled the air as she pushed through them, the crowd outside exploding in chaos. Inside, silence settled again, heavy and sharp. Derek stood at the altar alone, surrounded by scattered rose petals and broken whispers. He looked smaller than Mia had ever seen him. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. Mia, he said softly, please, I made mistakes, I was angry, I thought. You thought wrong, she interrupted gently. You thought love was a transaction, you thought cruelty made you strong, you thought I would stay silent forever, but silence ends eventually, Derek, always. He took a step closer, desperation flickering in his eyes. Please just tell me what you want, money, forgiveness, I'll do anything. Mia smiled faintly. You can't buy forgiveness and I already have everything I need. She turned slightly toward the guests, her voice carrying clearly now. To every woman here who's ever been told she isn't enough, don't let anyone define your worth. People can take your money, your home, your peace, but they can't take your power unless you hand it to them. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, one of the older women in the audience began to clap. Another followed. Within seconds, the entire room echoed with applause, soft at first, then growing louder until even the chandeliers seemed to vibrate with it. Mia nodded once in thanks, turned, and walked away. Her heels clicked against the marble, each step a closing door behind her. At the entrance, she paused, looked back one last time at Derek standing alone under the lights that were supposed to celebrate him, and said quietly, goodbye. Then she stepped out into the corridor. Reporters crowded near the exits, calling her name, flashing cameras in her direction. The cold air rushed in from the open doors, brushing against her gown. She didn't stop to pose or explain. She simply walked through the golden light spilling from the hotel windows, her head held high, her expression calm. Outside, the city stretched before her, loud, bright, alive. Snowflakes began to fall again, soft and slow. Tom hurried forward, opening the car door. Are you all right, ma'am? He asked gently. Mia smiled. I'm perfect, she said, stepping inside. The car door closed behind her, shutting out the noise. For a long moment she sat quietly, watching the hotel shrink in the rearview mirror. Her reflection in the window looked peaceful, stronger somehow. Back at the mansion, Lily was asleep when Mia returned. The house was quiet, the fireplace glowing softly. She walked upstairs, removed her jewelry, and stood by the nursery door. The baby stirred slightly, her tiny hand moving in a dream. Mia leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, It's over now, my love, we did it. She straightened, looking around the warm room, the soft light, the steady breathing of her child, the walls filled with safety. Everything she had lost had returned in a new form, not through hate but through strength. She thought of her grandmother's letter, folded in her nightstand drawer, and heard the words again, Forgive when you can, but never forget who you are. Mia smiled. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but she felt its first quiet shape forming inside her. She didn't need Derek's apology, she didn't need the world's praise, she had herself back. She walked to the window, pulling the curtains slightly aside. Snowflakes drifted under the streetlights, swirling like tiny sparks of peace. "Grandma," she whispered softly, "I kept my promise, I stood tall." Down in the city, flashes of news cameras still captured the chaos at the Ridgeview Grand. Reporters shouted Derek's name, headlines were already forming: abandoned wife owns husband's wedding venue, businessman humiliated by ex-wife's fortune. But Mia didn't care. The noise belonged to the world, her silence belonged to her. She turned from the window, switched off the lamp, and sat on the edge of her bed. The air felt warm, the night soft. In the distance, a clock struck midnight. She exhaled slowly, a deep, calm breath that carried the last pieces of pain out of her chest. For the first time in months, she lay down without fear, her mind free. As her eyes closed, she thought of the future, one built not on revenge but renewal. Tomorrow she would call Lawson, expand the charities her grandmother had started, create shelters for women like her, and name one after a leaner heart. She would build something that mattered. And when people spoke her name years from now, they wouldn't remember her as the woman who had been thrown into the snow. They would remember her as the woman who rose from it. Outside, snow kept falling, gentle and endless. Inside, a new story had begun. The morning after the wedding was quiet in Ridgewood Hills, the kind of quiet that sits heavy after a storm. Snow had stopped falling, leaving the world outside the mansion pure and untouched, like a blank page waiting for a new story. Mia stood by the window of her room, a mug of tea in her hands, watching the light rise slowly across the hills. It was strange how peace felt in her chest now, steady, clean, earned. Downstairs, the fireplace crackled softly, and somewhere down the hallway Janet was humming while preparing breakfast. The baby monitor on the nightstand played the gentle sound of Lily's breathing. Everything around her was warm and still, a world built not by luck but by strength, and yet deep inside Mia knew something unfinished lingered in the air. She had walked away from Derek in front of everyone, left him standing in his own humiliation, but a part of her still wanted to understand why. Not for him, but for herself, for the version of her that once believed in him. She didn't miss him, she didn't love him, but she wanted closure that went beyond silence. She wanted to see what remained of the man who had broken her. By noon, the world already knew her name. Every news station, every social post, every gossip site carried the same story. Businessman's ex-wife owns his wedding venue. Photos from the wedding had spread overnight: Mia in her emerald gown, Derek's shocked face, Brooke storming out. Some called it revenge, others called it karma, but Mia didn't read any of it. She didn't need the world's applause. What she wanted was purpose. She sat at her desk, flipping through her grandmother's old journals, each filled with notes about charities, businesses, and projects that a leaner heart had once dreamed of expanding. Mia traced the handwriting with her finger. Help those no one sees, build for those no one believes in. The words sank into her heart like seeds. For the first time since she had inherited the empire, she knew exactly what she wanted to do with it. She called Robert Lawson that afternoon. "Mr. Lawson," she said as soon as he answered, "I want to restart my grandmother's foundation. I want to build shelters for women and children, safe places for those who have lost everything like I did. We'll name it the A Leaner Heart Hope Initiative." There was a pause on the other end before Lawson replied, his voice warm. "She would be proud of you, Mia. I'll make the arrangements immediately." For the next several weeks, Mia worked harder than she ever had in her life. She met with architects, planners, and local leaders. She visited rundown neighborhoods, shelters that struggled to stay open, and centers that needed funding. Each time she walked through those doors, she saw a version of herself in the tired faces of the women sitting in those rooms, exhausted but still breathing, still holding on. When she spoke to them, she didn't speak as a billionaire. She spoke as someone who had been in the cold too. "You are not your pain," she told one woman holding her baby in a crowded hall. "You are what you choose to become after it." News of the foundation spread quickly. Media outlets tried to spin it as a revenge project, calling it the ex-wife's redemption empire, but Mia ignored the noise. Her purpose wasn't to fight with headlines, it was to build something that lasted. The staff she hired grew from 10 to 50, then to hundreds. Her leadership was quiet but firm, no shouting, no pride, just clarity. The people who worked for her respected her not because of her title, but because of her story. They saw how she treated everyone with the same kindness she had once begged for. Meanwhile, Derek's world was unraveling faster than he could hold it together. The wedding disaster had gone viral, and every business partner he had ever charmed started to distance themselves. His company's stock plummeted. Sponsors withdrew their deals. Even Brooke, after publicly ending things with him, sold her story to a magazine, painting him as a manipulative liar who used her for fame. The same people who had once praised Derek for his confidence now mocked him for his downfall. Paparazzi caught him leaving his office with boxes in his arms, his once perfect suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow. The man who had laughed while Mia begged was now the one facing doors closing in his face. Mia heard about it through the news but didn't react. She wasn't happy. She wasn't sad, she just felt nothing. That was how healing looked when the person who broke you could no longer stir emotion inside you. Still, fate has a way of circling back when something is left unsaid. One evening about 2 months after the wedding, Mia was in her office reviewing new project proposals when Janet walked in holding a note. "This just arrived, ma'am," she said gently. Mia took it and frowned when she saw the familiar handwriting. It was shaky, uneven. "Derek." The note was short. "Mia, please, I need to speak with you, just once, not for me because I owe you an apology. I'm at the old coffee shop near the park, the one we used to go to when we first got married. I'll wait even if you don't come." For a long moment, Mia just stared at the paper. She didn't want to see him, she didn't want to reopen wounds she had already healed. But something about the last line tugged at her heart, the mention of the place where they had once been happy. She wasn't going for him, she was going for the version of herself that had once believed she could fix him. That evening she put on a simple gray coat and drove herself into the city. The coffee shop looked smaller than she remembered, tucked between taller buildings, its sign faded but warm. Inside, the smell of roasted beans filled the air. Only a few customers sat scattered across the room. Derek sat near the window, staring into a half-empty cup. When she walked in, he looked up, and for a second he seemed unsure if it was really her. He looked older, thinner, tired. The confidence that once rolled off him was gone. He stood slowly. "You came," he said softly. Mia nodded and sat across from him. "You asked for 5 minutes," she said calmly. "You have 5." He swallowed, his voice trembling. "I don't know where to start," he said. "Maybe by saying I'm sorry for everything, for what I did to you, for what I said. I was angry at myself, at my failures, and I took it out on you. I wanted to feel powerful, and I thought stepping on you would make me bigger. It didn't, it made me smaller." Mia stayed silent, watching him. His words didn't heal her, they only confirmed what she had already known. He had been broken long before he broke her. "I lost everything," he continued, his eyes red. "The company, my reputation, Brooke, my friends, and every night when I close my eyes I see you standing there at the wedding, calm, strong, like you didn't need me at all. That's when I realized I never deserved you." Mia took a slow breath. "You're right," she said quietly. "You didn't." Derek flinched slightly, but she didn't say it with cruelty. Her voice was soft, almost sad. "I loved you, Derek, with everything I had. I built our home with hope. I believed every promise you made, and when you broke them I blamed myself. I thought maybe if I was thinner or quieter or better you'd love me again. But it was never about me. It was about you needing someone to control because you didn't know how to control your own fear." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted to tell you that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry." Mia looked out the window for a moment. The snow outside had started again, flakes swirling under the streetlight. "You don't need my forgiveness to move on," she said finally. "But you do need to forgive yourself. The man I knew is gone, Derek, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe you can build someone better from what's left." He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. "You really became everything I thought I was," he whispered. "Strong, respected, loved, you won." She shook her head. "This wasn't a competition," she said softly. "I didn't win, I healed. There's a difference." She stood, wrapping her coat tighter. "Goodbye, Derek." He looked up, panic flickering in his eyes. "Will I ever see you again?" Mia paused, her hand on the back of the chair. "I don't think you need to," she said gently. "You already saw everything you needed to see." She left the coffee shop without looking back. The cold wind met her outside, sharp but clean, and she smiled faintly. Some chapters didn't need revenge or even forgiveness, they just needed an ending. The weeks that followed brought more peace than she thought possible. The Alina Heart Hope Initiative opened its first shelter downtown, a beautiful brick building with white walls and warm lighting. The opening ceremony was simple but full of emotion. Women from all walks of life stood beside her, some with children, some alone, all of them carrying their own battles. Mia gave a short speech, her voice steady but filled with warmth. "This place isn't built on pity," she said. "It's built on strength. It's built on the belief that no matter how hard life hits you, you can always stand again. I'm living proof of that, and so are you." The applause that followed was soft but endless. Her work grew quickly after that. Partnerships, donations, new branches, everything seemed to fall into place, but she stayed humble. Each success reminded her of her grandmother's words. "Power means nothing if it doesn't heal you." She carried those words like a compass. Every time she signed a deal or cut a ribbon, she thought not about Derek's face at the wedding, but about the faces of the women who would sleep safely because of what she was building. Still, the world didn't forget the story that had started it all. Interviews and requests poured in from television networks, talk shows, and magazines, but Mia agreed to only one. It wasn't for fame, it was to tell the truth the way she wanted it told. Sitting across from the interviewer under soft studio lights, she looked calm, graceful, honest. People call it revenge, the interviewer said, but it seems more like redemption. What do you call it? Mia smiled softly. I call it rebirth, she said. Pain changes people, some let it destroy them, others let it shape them. I didn't plan to stand where I am today, I just refused to stay on the ground. The clip went viral within hours, but Mia didn't read the comments. She had learned that peace isn't found in noise, it's found in purpose. Months passed, and one spring morning she sat in the garden of her mansion watching Lily take her first steps on the grass. The baby laughed, her small hands reaching for balance, her curls shining under the sun. Mia's heart swelled as she picked her up, spinning her gently. You see that, Lily? She whispered. That's what strength looks like, falling and getting back up. Janet appeared at the doorway, smiling. Mrs. Cole, she said warmly, Mr. Lawson is here to see you. Mia nodded, carrying Lily inside. Lawson stood in the foyer holding a leather folder. I won't take much of your time, he said kindly. I just wanted to tell you something. Do you remember when you said you didn't know how to handle all this? Mia smiled faintly. Yes. Well, Lawson said, opening the folder to show her a document. You're now one of the most respected female CEOs in the state. The board unanimously voted you chair of the Heart Group last week. For a moment, Mia just stared, then she laughed quietly, shaking her head. Grandma really knew what she was doing, she said softly. Lawson nodded. She believed in you, we all do. After he left, Mia stood alone in the grand hallway, sunlight pouring through the windows. She thought about everything that had led her here, the nights she had cried, the cold porch, the shelter, the letter, the courtroom of her own pain. Every tear had built something inside her, brick by brick, until she was unbreakable. That night, after putting Lily to bed, she sat at her desk and wrote a letter of her own, one she planned to keep sealed until her daughter was old enough to read it. My sweet Lily. By the time you read this, you'll know who your mother was and where we came from. I want you to remember something. People will always try to measure your worth by what they see. Don't let them. Your value lives in your kindness, your courage, and your truth. If you ever face darkness, remember our story. Remember that we once walked through snow with nothing but hope, and hope was enough. Build your life with love even when it hurts. And when you have everything, use it to lift someone else. That's what true wealth means. With all my love. Mom. She folded the letter carefully and placed it inside a small wooden box next to her grandmother. Then she looked out the window one last time before bed. The sky was full of stars, bright and endless, each one a reminder that no night lasts forever. Somewhere across the city, Derek sat alone in a small rented apartment, staring at an old photo of the two of them smiling on their wedding day. He traced her face with his finger and whispered, "She made it." He wasn't bitter anymore. He wasn't angry. He was just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when life finally teaches you what pride never could. Back in Ridgewood Hills, Mia turned off the light, lay down beside her sleeping daughter, and smiled. She didn't need to dream of better days anymore. She was already living them. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, gentle and sure, carrying with it the soft promise of tomorrow. The woman who had once been thrown into the snow had built her own summer. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support our growth and get more life-changing stories like this one.